Hello world, Lee here from Ruby Gold. In this episode, we're going to have some more fun going through our exorcism track. Going through the next video, I think we're going to be revisiting an earlier concept, not an earlier video, but the amusement park concept on this one, and learning a new skill. There's a couple of things just to set the stage a little bit, prep our tools before we go and dig for some Ruby Gold. Just a reminder, in these videos, my point is to show you a happy path to solving the exercise. I don't claim that these are the best solutions. I don't claim that these are they're good solutions. they're just not necessarily the best solutions. But I would always encourage you, after we're done, to look at some other solutions. After you're done, to look at some other solutions and see how other people solve these problems. The only other thing setting the stage today that I want to say is I will probably make a lot of typos. I have been working on transitioning my keyboard layout to a different layout. I have historically used QWERTY. I'm moving to something else. But as a developer, a lot of people often get these mental fixations on the way that their tools are. And I think we do it as programmers more than a lot of other professions, that we worry about our tools. We endlessly configure them. We endlessly upgrade them. We always tweak them and so forth. And the reality is, yes, your tools are important because we work with them day to day, but it doesn't really matter, if you're using one text editor versus another. As long as you master it, it doesn't really matter if you have a split keyboard layout versus the keyboard that comes with your computer, right? They might matter if you develop problems, wrist-related stuff. I use a split keyboard layout. I've actually recently shifted it so it's further apart than it used to be. I used to keep it still with my hands pretty close together. These days I've moved it so my hands are a lot further apart. Honestly, you don't need any of that to be a good developer. You can use QWERTY as a good developer. The developer who is probably most responsible for my early beginning in programming, 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, that developer at the time could not touch type. He was a hunt and peck typist. I think he used his 2 index fingers, and that was it. And he was a very skillful developer. So it helps. You can type faster. If you can type as fast as you can think, that's helpful, but it's not necessary. You really don't need much. I feel that most people can learn to code with the lowest barrier to entry that probably any profession has. So anyway, that's all of setting the stage. We're going to be swapping over in just a moment here and start on this exercise. I should probably get on with it, right? Let's go. All right. So back on exercism here, we can see that we're in the Ruby track. We have 4 solutions, and there's this one here in the middle. So this is just the overview for Ruby. We can see it's Amusement Park Improvements. We've previously solved the amusement park. I'm just going to look over here at the learning journey, and we can see that we are skipping around quite a bit. We still have a lot that we have not unlocked. And we have a variety of exercises we could go to. The one we're going to look at is actually down here in booleans. And that's quite all right. I think this is perfectly reasonable. We don't need to learn everything there is to know about strings before we do booleans. A lot of development, you're just kind of focusing on what you need to know in the moment. Certainly having a background, you'll be a much more capable developer if you have solved all of these exercises versus if you only have a couple of each. But it's quite all right, the order we do these in. This is the order I'm choosing. If you've done a different order, there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, so let's go on over here. I'm pretty excited. I don't know if this actually ties back into the amusement park exercise, but I do like the fact that it at least references it, because obviously a lot of programming that you do is going to be modifying existing code and making improvements. So let's get started. I have no idea what we're going to be doing here. It does look like some of the methods are similar, although a little bit different. Let's see, results. I feel like every time I load this up, the options are different in here. I thought last time there were actually tests. How curious. It's always different, right? I should probably come in these before actually getting started. But we're going to do what we normally do. We're going to run the tests first. We're going to see, all right, just kind of get a lay of the land. You know, I want to make sure here in Exercism, it really doesn't matter. But in the real world, I just kind of want to get a lay of the land. What I'm expecting, you know, I get the information back that I'm actually expecting. I expect all these tests to fail. I would be kind of surprised if any of them passed, because we haven't filled anything out. So we get all the tests to fail, but we also learn other things. We learn that there's 9 tests. So there's 9 things we have to solve. There's probably not 9 instructions. There's probably about 3 instructions, maybe 4, possibly 5. So we're going to see that some of these get solved through the same solution. We might pass one, but not actually pass all the tests for that method. But this tells us, you know, the basic stuff, that we have failing tests. So that means we've got a place to start from, and we've got a place to go. So just looking at the test information here, refute. So attendee.new 100.haspass. So I'm guessing that we probably have something that's going to pass an ID, or no, actually, the thing about it, probably a height. Yep, because it's .new, so it's probably an attribute on the attendee class, so it's probably the height. And I'm working from very little memory of, honestly, the previous exercise. Hopefully you are coming to this exercise like the next day, the next hour. It's been a while since I recorded the last video, so let's see. Essentially, the test error is that the attendee has passed method is not implemented. And we can see that we raised the condition, we raised the message, please implement the attendee has passed method. So looking at the code here, this is kind of new. We're being told do not edit the above methods, only add your methods below. So the surface area is that we're instructed not to adjust these. We're only instructed to adjust these and possibly add more. So I think that's new versus any of the previous episodes if you're watching these in order. All right, so has pass, you know, just a sort of a sanity check here. There I go. Like I said, I'm going to make a lot of typos today. In theory, I should be passing a test, but we know that's not the correct way to pass a test. So sorry, I'm just clicking around. I really like to see my tests. I wonder if it's like a per exercise thing, that some exercises show the tests and some don't. Maybe there's a flag or a condition. But basically, if we are calling attendee.new 100.haspass, so we initialize with a height. Let's jump over here. And see, like, what is it we're trying to do? So I would argue, you know, as some of you said in previous videos, like, some of these are actually a little bit unclear. They're a little vague in their instructions. And without seeing the test, like, I'm not entirely sure what I should be looking at here. So we've not issued a pass, right? So I guess let's think about it that way. We have these methods that we're not supposed to touch. We can issue a pass and revoke a pass. when we instantiate this, so here's what I said. It looks like we've got a couple tests that relate to just this first little exercise we're doing here. When we initialize, so if we do attendee.new, right, we've initialized it. So our attendee has a height, right? We should be able to get attendee.height. But this first one here, I would actually ignore for the moment and look at this one. So this test failed because it expected true to not be truthy, right? So essentially what it did was it expected I can see that the test would be written kind of expecting like a false value here, a falsy value, right? True is a truthy value, false is a falsy value, and everything else is confusing, right? Nil, what is nil? Is it a truthy or a falsy value? These are things to look into and sort of get a familiarity with. But in this case, we've initialized our attendee, but we've never actually issued a pass. So has pass would be probably something like pass ID. So let's run these tests and see. So essentially what we could do is query pass ID on the expectation that we're going to get sort of one or two things back. We're either going to get nil or an ID back. Let's just see what happens. So we passed some tests. We're no longer just returning true or false. We are in fact returning either an ID or nil. So as I sort of alluded to, maybe nil is a falsy value, at least here and now. So new instance doesn't have pass, right? New instance does not have pass, doesn't have pass. So these tests, sorry, this video I'm kind of disjointed, a little bit of interaction here. I know that some of you have mentioned that sometimes these instructions are a little bit vague. And here we've actually got a typo in a test. Exercism is an open source platform. I responded to one of you in a previous video about this. Exercism is an open source platform. And so you could actually take the opportunity to adjust the test for this exercise and correct this typo here. Either add the apostrophe for doesn't or change it to does not. For honestly, I would say does not is actually a little bit more clear, adds a little clarity. New instance does not have pass, have a pass, right? I don't want like to see people constantly like tweaking typos and going back and forth, have pass, have a pass, have pass, right? Correcting each other. But you know, this typo doesn't, there may be a reason for that, right? An apostrophe, an apostrophe maybe someone used a double quote, a single quote here, and they didn't escape the apostrophe correctly. So there's a couple of things that could be going on here. If it bugs you, you could submit a pull request, get some open source experience. It would be pretty low barrier to entry how to do that. And if you're curious and interested and you don't know where to start, let me know in the comments. We can talk about that. But let's move on. Let's go forward here so we can see new instance doesn't have pass, which pass ID should return nil, and that should be a falsy value here, right? So when issued pass, so in this code run, the attendee was created and issued a pass. We're assuming that worked correctly. So basically, we're not touching these because we're assuming that they are implemented correctly. And then we should get a pass ID back, which is a truthy value for the purpose of the test. And then same thing here. So they were issued a pass and it was revoked. And because the revoked sets it back to nil, it ended up being a falsy value. Cool. So that was a pretty easy test to pass. You may have tried to do some if statements in here. You may have tried to compare things. You may have tried to do any number of things to return a true or false, right? You may have been like, if pass ID, I don't know, what am I trying to do? Not equal to nil, right? You might have done something like this. and returned true and else false, right? And let's see, I assume that would pass the same 3 tests. Yeah, right. So you may have done something like that, and that's fine. It's a fine place to start. Often we want to just pass tests and sort of refactor from there. So if you had done this, it really wouldn't have been that big of a deal. And let's see, what do we do? Pass ID. I think that's what we did. We'll run the test once more. But I would hope that you look at that and start to see, like, it's kind of verbose. There's a lot of lines of code. And whether you came to that conclusion yourself or not as you're watching this video, I hope that you see that returning this is quite simple in comparison. It's a single line of code, a very short line of code. It does sort of like think about what's getting returned and what it's actually selecting. So arguably, this might not actually be the best code. But basically, we're checking whether this is truthy or falsy value. So this might not be the best code, but it passes these tests. So let's move on. Fits ride exactly. Okay, so we're going to be doing the next one, fits ride. And basically, ride minimum height. So, yes, so we've got a fits ride exactly, a fits ride, fits small ride, and doesn't fit big ride. These might be bundled together. Because we've got some more things here that are going to tackle the allowed to ride. So let's look at these 3. So we sort of are going to have situations where the rider's height matches, right? Fits ride exactly. The rider's height matches the ride requirement. Fits a small ride, so they're going to at least match the ride height. And then doesn't fit big ride. So actually a scenario where they don't fit, right? So you could think about it the same person going on multiple different rides, or you could think of it as different attendees all going on the same ride. It could be either way. Our code should work in either scenario. So let's see, we're being told to please implement the method. So smallest change, we're going to take that raise out, run these again. They should still fail, but we should get a different error message. And here we go, different error message. Well, that's kind of curious. We passed a test. So we passed the doesn't fit big ride test. And if you think about it, the condition there is that the attendee is not tall enough to ride this ride. Because we don't have anything, this method is actually returning nil. And as we saw previously, when we return nil, it's considered a falsy value. So in that respect, this actually returns false. It would be the same as saying just a blanket false here. We should pass the same test number 6. So that's just a curious thing to think about there. We hope that our solution passes that test correctly. So let's think about this. We essentially want to check that the height, So in the first scenario, fits ride exactly. So if the height matches the ride minimum height. Now, some of these typos are not excused by switching my keyboard layouts. So this is kind of what we're trying to test for test number 4. And we can see that test number 4 works. We kind of got a fluke here where test number 5 also works. But test number 6 doesn't work. And this code should work correctly. So essentially, in these scenarios. So why did this one work? That's kind of a curious one. Attendee, 100 equals, so why would 100 equal 80? I'm not really sure why that one is passing. I would expect this one to pass, but not this one. And there it is. So we have to think about Ruby syntax. Comparison operator is a double equal, right? So let's run that again and see what goes on here. That's a common mistake. I make it all the time. Linters will usually catch that for me or other things. All right, so cool. So we can see doesn't fit big ride, which in this case is accurate, and fits ride exactly, which is also accurate. So I have a lot more confidence in the way I've written this now for passing at least test 4 and 6. Test 5, do they fit this small ride? So that's going to fail because the way we wrote this is that they match the height exactly. But really, we want to make sure that they're just at least that height, right? So to think about it, without losing our passing test for fits right exactly, we can just do greater than or equal to. And I'm expecting now that all 3 of those tests should pass, 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, so pretty simple solution there. I don't think we need to take a lot of time to discuss that. I hope you understand what happened there. But let's move on because this exercise is about booleans, right? Was it about booleans or nil? Honestly, I can't remember. Booleans, I believe. Yeah, true and false. So our next thing here is about fitting ride, but no pass. So it sort of comes back around. Like this was sort of a red herring, as it were, just kind of an implementation of checking. So we're returning a true or false value. I guess it's not a red herring. It's kind of important. But you can logically conclude that now someone has to both have a pass and fit the ride. And that is this new method here, allowed to ride. So essentially, someone is allowed to ride if they fit the ride and have a pass. So I guess they can get into the park and not have a pass. Let's do the smallest change we can. We just want to remove that and run the test. Hopefully 3 tests, so we actually just have 1 test failing. And that would be the positive case where the person actually should be validly able to. So what we can see is we have not excluded people from riding who should be disqualified from riding. So let's think about this. Let's think about the positive case, right? So essentially, the inclusion, the idea here is that they have pass and they fit the ride, right? So we pass in that ride minimum height. Yeah. So to not think about the others, essentially what we're doing here is we're calling one method that should be returning true or false. And so if it's false, we immediately fail, right? Because of this and. If it's true, then we check this one. And if that's false, we return false for the combination. And if it's true, we return true. But we never really need to check that if this one is false. So let's see what this does. Let's see if we pass our tests. Okay, so we passed some test. Fits ride, but no pass. So that person should not be allowed to ride because they didn't have a pass. So this would have been false. Fits ride and pass. So let's see what's going on here. It looks like I probably did a syntax error. No name, so name error, right? No method with this name. Ride minimum height for an instance of attendee. So I think what's actually going on here is not that it's not the ride minimum. Oh, maybe it is. So there's a typo here. So we'll get to what I think it was in a moment. Let's see what happens. I still think it's going to fail the same two tests. And here we get a no method error. So before we had a name error, now we have a no method error. Fits ride. And that's because I forgot to use the question mark there. I do use a lot of autocomplete when I'm typing. My setup, my text editor, will usually suggest autocompletion for methods. So I actually really don't type a lot of my methods out when I'm using them in the code. But let's see what happens now. I think I have everything spelled and written correctly. So let's run tests and see what we get. Hey, look at that. We succeeded. So it looks like we solved the exercise. We can submit this. We'll wait a second, see, because we can get some feedback, automated feedback, see if it suggests that we do anything a little bit differently. And it looks like no immediate feedback. So this is a pretty solid solution. This is something that you would pretty confidently push in a pull request and have reviewed by your team. Let's take a brief peek at community solutions. I have a feeling that there would be people, maybe not. I'm not actually seeing what I would have expected to see here. Okay, well, that's fine. So they're not grouped. I'm kind of curious what these do. Let's just go to the first one here. It's got the most shares, and we can look at this one as well. There's not a lot of comments, not a lot of interaction with these. Mostly just shares. Does this button, what does this actually indicate? Oh, maybe that indicates similar submissions, I think. Yeah, okay. So that indicates what we can see reading this interface is it looks like a share arrow. But what that actually means is number of times someone has published a solution similar to this. So this one is the most common solution by far and probably matches the one that we just did. Well, actually, no, it doesn't, because so this person not equal to nil did a solution like that. So they didn't use the if statement, right? They actually shortcutted it. So they did basically the same check here, but they just did a return true or false, relying on the return value. So that would have been like a second step. We could have done the first step. We wrote the full if statement, and then we simplified it by just doing the check, knowing that the check would also return true or false. And then the third statement could be maybe our solution. Now, our solution probably depends on whether or not your team would accept it. They might not like the clarity. They might not like the simplicity. They might want that clarity. Here, so it seems like probably a lot of these solutions vary based on the way that this is written. So here it was specifically a nil check, which actually I kind of like that. You may look at this and say not spelled out. Maybe we could just, let's see if the third one does it. No, all right. So what's the difference here? They switched the order of these methods. Let's try one more. Also fairly, these drop off in commonality, but let's see. Here we are. Okay. So not pass ID. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So the double not. Think about it. The first one would be not pass ID, right? So has pass, not pass ID, which would actually be invalid. So they're checking that it's not, right? I'm hoping someone's got sort of a combination. Here we are. This is what I was looking for. So you could check if it's nil, right? This is probably the solution I like the most. So we're returning pass ID.nil. And because we're checking if they have the pass, we're just returning the inverse of that. So not nil, essentially is what we're saying, that pass ID is not nil. If pass ID is not nil, we're returning true. And if pass ID is nil, so if this is false, we're returning false. So this is probably the solution I like the most. This is probably the most clear because it meets like expectations. It's easy to tell what the code is doing, actually easier than my solution is. So probably I would modify my solution to be like this. And then I'm just curious, maybe I have to go to a different page. I'm surprised nobody, so people really followed the instructions. What am I getting at? Let's jump down. Here we go. If I go far enough, I can definitely find some people not following the rules. So what I'm trying to get at is this idea. And I'm kind of curious, can I see, if I go back to community solutions before I move on. Let's sort. What's the difference here? Oh, this must be not the fewest lines of code. Wait, what? How is that the fewest lines of code? That looks like a long solution. 45 lines of code. Wasn't our solution shorter than that? Maybe I'm confused by the sorting method. Oh, this is a nice view. I'm just kind of curious if there's a way to see which one my solution matches. That would be nice. I would like to see what solution mine matches. But regardless, so what I was thinking of is, oh yeah, continue in editor. So we dug deeper. Hey, look at that. We got that checked off. And of course, once this video is published, you'll actually see a dig deeper tab here that you can go to. So if you're watching this on Exercism, you'll see that. If you're just watching these videos on YouTube, thank you. I appreciate that. Please do like and subscribe. It helps me. I enjoy the feedback that I get, and it encourages me to do these videos more frequently. I'm hoping to have a regular cadence soon. I just finished a lot of travel, and I should be at my desk a lot more frequently to do these videos. So the only thing left is, if we don't have any other solution, any other improvements, we could do this. I am going to continue to edit. Like I said, I actually do appreciate the clarity. Even though it's longer, it's got more on the line. I feel like this is more clear, that we're specifically checking that it's not nil. Even though this does result in the same thing, I don't think it's as clear. And so you have to take a moment to think about it. And so as long as this passes, which it should, yeah, I think this is a better solution, to be quite honest. I was surprised that nobody came through here and modified these. So like, do not edit above methods. Okay, so it tells us to do that, right? If we want to follow the rules, like, yeah, that's what we would do. I don't really like to follow the rules too much. I would not be entirely upset if someone did this. I'm just kind of, I mean, like in the real world, I would expect to see something more like this, to be honest. But probably this is an early thing. I can't recall when we talk about things like our adder readers and adder writers and adder attribute accessors. But like in reality, this is probably, we actually technically add, depending on how you count it, 1 or 2 lines of code. So there is some argument that this is actually lesser good. I just don't like interacting with my variables directly. I do like this better. I can't decide if I want to keep it this way or not. Do not edit above methods. Add your own methods below. I'm not gonna follow the rules this time. I'm actually gonna push it like this. Now, I'd be curious to hear your opinions, if you like that, if you don't like that, if you think it's important to follow the rules. With coding, we're looking for the happy path through, and sometimes the rules don't tell us everything. Just like sometimes the instructions are less clear than we need. Sometimes the tests, we can pass them without actually passing them. Sometimes these rules are not quite necessary. And then in the cleanest, because we got rid of that, we're not following that. Let's run it one more time. Now I don't even have any comments in my code here. So I think this is all pretty good. I think it's a pretty straightforward problem. So I think we're going to submit this. We should not get any feedback automated. I'm curious if putting the outer reader there is going to do something. Nope. So now we've got a solution. It is thoroughly our own. We took feedback from others, and I kind of like that. We're going to push our solution. We can move on. We unlocked 3 new concepts. I'm pretty happy with this. I don't know where it's going to show up in the list, but I'm pretty happy with this. I think overall this was a good solution. It was pretty quick and easy, so I do appreciate you being here and following along. I'm enjoying these videos, and I hope to make many more episodes and one day get through all of the Ruby exercism track. So once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. If you're watching these on YouTube, please subscribe and like the video and leave me comments. I appreciate all the feedback I've received. And yeah, so thanks again. We're going to end this video. And remember, there's gold in them there rubies.